Welcome back. Now, the US has withdrawn from the Just Energy Transition Partnership with the UK, France, Germany and the EU. This leaves South Africa with a near $2 billion climate financing gap, which the country is currently looking to plug with alternatives. Just what does this mean for the Just Energy Transition? Tracey Davies, Executive Director of Just Share, joins us with her thoughts. Thank you so much for your time. Tracey, let's actually talk about the US's power here. Does it have the power to change the goals and the targets set for the green energy transition, particularly looking at the goals set by the Paris Agreement?
So the short answer is no, not through the Just Energy Transition Partnership, or the JETP, as you've said. The JETP was always designed to support South Africa's transition, not to dictate its terms. And it's up to the member countries who have contributed to the fund, which they call themselves the International Partners Group, or the IPG. It's up to them to assess on an ongoing basis whether South Africa's plans and progress on the transition are robust and ambitious enough to warrant the continuing, support, financial support for South Africa. But by withdrawing from the JETP, the USA, of course, abdicates its role in assessing whether or not those plans are suitable for, ongoing financial support. So from the point of view of the JETP specifically, the USA is essentially weakening its position in intervening or supporting South Africa's just transition. But of course, that doesn't mean that the US doesn't have other levers to pressure the country to adopt a particular path.
And I'm wondering, just with these, the International Partners Group, I mean, we have a number of countries in there. How big was the US's role there in terms of plugging in the investment that we need to get to a sustainable position in the just energy transition?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that the funds pledged by the IPG, which I think at the moment come to around 13.8 billion US dollars, are even in total a fraction of all the funds we need to achieve a just transition. But having said that, the USA's portion of those pledged funds was, I think, around about 10%.
Okay.
So, not insignificant. We're still talking about around about, for example, 56 million US dollars in grants that could have supported technical capacity and on-the-ground programs in South Africa. So I don't mean to suggest that it's not a blow. But on the other hand, you still have all of the other members of the IPG who have reaffirmed their commitment to the Just Energy Transition Partnership. It is an ongoing process of leveraging the power and the progress of the JETP to access other sources of funding. And of course, this whole project, this whole program was only ever meant to be a Kickstarter, a kind of catalyst for raising vast amounts more funding from the private sector, from the public sector, from multilateral development banks, etc. So, it's not as if this once this American amount has been withdrawn, there are absolutely no other avenues or pathways to replace that funding. So I think at this stage, it's much more of a symbolic gesture than one which is going to have a dramatic impact on the JETP itself.
Well, talking about these pathways to replace that funding, I mean, what would be ideal at the moment, and also just looking at the kind of funding that would be friendly to South Africa?
Well, South Africa has a extremely sophisticated and very well-resourced financial sector of its own. And there is no question that a very significant portion of the financing that we need for the just energy transition can come from within the country. It's certainly not the situation that we should be sitting back and saying, let's wait for other people to give us the funding to do this. And in fact, that is a very dangerous position position to take. Of course, we've seen the consequences of a change in policy in the US. There is undoubtedly going to be more of that kind of consequence, because we're now seeing the EU donors, many of whom are the biggest donors to things like the Just Energy Transition Partnership. They themselves are reducing their aid budgets in order to increase their defense spending. So, you know, more and more the messaging I think that's coming out of this is that we are, to a certain extent, on our own. And we have to use the expertise that has been, that is starting to be developed with the Kickstarter funds that have been provided by the JETP. We have to build on that within South Africa. We have to use the progress that's been made by the JETP so far. And we also have to get our own house in order. We need to sort out our own policy position and our own messaging in order to ensure that we can make progress on this very, very important thing that we've committed to do.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, of course, that you say that we really also need to look internally in order to be able to raise this funding to fill that gap. But just also maybe from other options that are coming from outside of South Africa, do we need to do more in terms of making the environment, the ground fertile to be able to attract this kind of financing to the country?
Absolutely. And of course, this has been one of the very interesting aspects of the JETP so far, is that even in the very short period of time since the JETP was announced in 2021, the government has done some fairly significant, serious backtracking on commitments, like saying that we are now going to extend the life of coal-fired power stations, which we had previously agreed to decommission. So there is a vast swathe of policy and other issues that we need to sort out internally. I'd say amongst the top three of those is, first of all, we need to get our messaging straight. We need to sort out the situation where we've got some government departments vehemently advocating for fossil fuels and spreading misinformation about the benefit of fossil fuels, and other government departments stating that we are committed to the JETP. So that kind of mixed messaging is obviously very bad for investment. Second of all, we have to stick to our guns on decommissioning coal, because if we don't do that, we really put all sorts of financing at risk. And finally, not finally overall, but out of my sort of top three now, we have to fast track the policy and regulatory changes required to enable rapid debundling of Eskom and expansion of our transmission so that we can connect more renewable energy to the grid.
All right. Well, we do have to wrap up the conversation there, but thank you so much for your insights on this very, very important topic, Tracey. That was Tracey Davies, Executive Director of Just Share.